this is Danny Danzi, and I'm here to do some question and answers. I was contacted by Chris from DarkStars.de, and I figured rather than just do, the regular email message, text thing, let's do a video and have a little fun with it, do a little playing, do a little talking, and hopefully I can straighten, a few of you out, talking tones and guitars and stuff like that. I'll try not to be too long though. So let's take a look at some of the questions that Chris had asked me. When you start guitar playing, do you remember your first guitar? My first guitar was an acoustic that I still have. I don't even know the name of it because it doesn't have anything written on it. It's probably something in the inside of the bowl, but I actually still have that. My first electric was a couple years later. I was probably maybe 6 or 7 years old, and it was like a Kingston or a Tisco, something like that. One of those sunburst type guitars, that you get at like a Sears department store, or one of those old places that used to sell a little bit of everything. So it was a fun guitar. I actually had a lot of fun with that for quite a few years before I got my first Stratocaster. Let's see. His next question is, what are your influences and which guitar players are my favorites? I grew up on, the Eddie Van Halen, Randy Rhoads, 80s guys, Warren DeMartini, George Lynch, Yngwie Malmsteen, Dan Huff from Giant, John Sykes, Neil Schon, and then some of the blues guys like Eric Gales, Joe Bonamassa, David Gilmour, Gary Moore. That's pretty much where my roots come from, and a lot of when I was a drummer originally, and I would listen to bands like Alice Cooper, Beatles. Chicago was one of my favorites. I love Terry Kath. Thought he was one of the best guitar players ever for the time. So I was really into that kind of stuff, and I think those guys have influenced me most definitely. But once I got the Eddie Van Halen, Randy Rhoads bug, it was all like uphill from there, because those guys were just such monstrous players. You couldn't just learn the technique, you had to get that tone, But little did we know back then, a lot of your tone comes from your fingers. So, you live and learn and spend a lot of money, and you're still unhappy, Let's see, how many guitars do I own and what are my favorite models? I had 48 at one time. I've sold quite a few of them. I haven't done a count in a long time. But most of the guitars, there was a music store that went out of business, and I had first shot at a lot of the guitars that they had, in their downstairs stock room. And I just went there and bought a bunch of them, a lot of Gibsons and Fenders. And I don't really like Gibson or Fender. They're great guitars. They're worth money. I got to have 24 frets. They just don't accentuate the way I like to play. It doesn't help me to become me, if that answers the question. So I like these Carvins. I absolutely think these are just amazing, and it's really the only guitar that I need, and that's what I wanted to kind of talk to you about and show you, some of the capabilities that this guitar, can muster up there. I have, quite a few sounds that I can show you out of one pouch. It's a nice guitar that has, lots of good stuff in here. I'm gonna wrap around my chair. So one of the things I like about this guitar is all the switching and everything. I have a push-pull volume knob for active and passive. So what's good about that is for clean sounds, it just gives you that, almost like that piezo chime bell type thing for clean sounds. I have my Strat, coil taps here, so I can do each individual pickup. So if I want, my back pickup to be a single coil and the front to remain humbucker, I can do that, or vice versa, or both, which is really cool. I have a phase switch for when I'm in the middle position. I just have a 3-way toggle. So, this guitar gets a wide array of sounds. And then when you go into active mode, all right, this becomes like a preamp with, bass and treble knobs, so you can tailor the sound to whatever you want. And then when you're back in passive mode, you just have your regular tone knob. But you can get quite a few great sounds out of this guitar. Like right now, I have a dirty sound up, and I have a, which I'll show you, my pedal boards that I'm using down here. I used my cell phone so we wouldn't have to move the cameras all over the place. But I took some pictures of like my studio rigs, and I'll get to that video to show you. But I have a pedal board down here. Everything I use is fractal. So the fractal pedal board is down here, and there's quite a few things that you can do within one sound, having that board, expression pedals, the whole 9 yards. So I can get a nice little, you know, like a good rock sound. You back the volume down, it cleans up real nice. Little stratty. Here's a little of the active. And that's back to passive. See, it just gives it a little bit of a different kind of tone, and when I step on my pedal, which actually gives me more and even that, with all that gain, actually, it's not crystal clean, but you know, it cleans up kind of nice. You get that. You know, it's a good rocking sound. Now for the cleans, I'll give you one of my clean sounds. You definitely want to go for the actives on that. Same thing back in passive mode. Here it's kind of dull sounding. Really cool clean sounds, and a neat little 12-string sim. So these are all sounds that I've actually used on the album and on the new album Tribulations. Actually, everything you're hearing is part of that. You know, all of the array of sounds that were created for that particular album. So, you know, just wanted to give you some ideas of what this guitar is capable of doing, you know, and I just can't get enough of it. So it's got all those different sounds, and when you add in like an amp modeler and some effects, it really comes to life. So let's see what else Chris asks. And as far as my favorite models go, I like the Carvins. I have an Ibanez that I play. I have 3 of these Carvins. I have 2 like this one, and then I have a purple one that is all passive. I was a little afraid to take the active plunge at first. I figured, oh, what happens? The battery dies, everything dies. So that's a good thing about this. If my battery dies for the active mode, I still have passive. It will not be dead. I can still use it, you know, which I use passive for most of the dirty stuff. I only really use actives for clean. It just sounds great. So let's see. And we've already established that I don't know how many guitars I have left. I would say, if I had to take a guess, I would say at least 20 plus at this point. What do you think makes the perfect guitar and amp? How do you feel about the question of a modeler or a tube amp? Well, that's really a loaded question. I think that you want to get the amp that is best for you. You want to get the guitar that's best for you. I think with guitars and amps, it's going to sound funny. It's the only way I can really explain it. I think if I'm going to use an old Harry Potter, a scenario here, they say, the wand chooses the wizard. I think the guitar and the amp chooses the player. I really do. I've had tube amps that were horrible. Just because something has tubes or valves doesn't mean it's going to sound great. I've had quite a few that were horrible, and they always seem to let me down. Whether a preamp tube blows or a power amp tube blows, there's always something that goes wrong with them. And a lot of times, I've had a whole bunch of effects, going into an amp to make it sound good, and that's really not fun. Then you're really not getting the sound of the amplifier. You're doing more of the effects. So the fractal tones that you're hearing from me right now is a compressor, a distortion pedal that, they're all built into the program, and I'm using a JCM 800 modded Marshall. So that's pretty much it. I have my own cabinet impulses. I love modeling. I'll take a modeler over a tube amp any day, only because of the versatility. And I think if you have the right company pushing, like Fractal has, really, I think, stepped up their game, and they have the best 12AX7 tube sound, in my opinion. That's where a lot of modelers fail. For example, when you hit pinch harmonics, with tubes, especially like the Eddie Van Halen kind of chirp, yeah, we're not going to do it with a clean sound. Like, that's not transistor. Transistor amps don't sound like that, even though this is a transistor tube modeled rig. That's just like, there's something about that. My tube rigs sounded like that. They get that. So I want that sound. I want a tube front end. I don't care about the tube back end. Like that Angus Young AC/DC sound. That's a great sound. That's not for me. I want the hair. I want that in the beginning. You know what I mean? I want that in the front of my line. I don't want to be so loud where it's killing my hearing. It's killing my audience. Like, if you guys wouldn't believe how low this sound is right now for me to get that. This thing is crazy. That's a boatload of sustain, and my volume's wide open. You're not hearing any noise or hiss, that's amazing for that amount of gain, seriously. And again, if you heard how low this actually is right now, because the louder I make it, the more it'll bleed through the camera microphones, That's all I get. Now, I'm also a player that doesn't ever leave my volume open. I have this thing where I'm so quick on the volume knob. I can just like hit a chord, and I'm right on it, I don't know where I got that from or why I do that, but you ever hear guys that leave their guitar, it's screaming all over, you hear all this 60 cycle hum. Be professional at all times. But yeah, I think you got to get the guitar and the amp that fits your style of playing. Because at the end of the day, tone is in your fingers, but your amp is going to enhance that. Whether you use a modeler like what I have here, and again, like I said, we're going to get to where I show you, some of the other rigs that I have, but it's all fractal stuff. I have my live rig in the back over here, my big one, and then I have a little guy out in the other room. You'll see that too. I'm using all the same stuff, and it sounds fantastic. So, yeah, I'm an amp modeler guy all the way. There's so much more versatility, in my opinion. Amps are heavy, the tubes, it's a great sound if you find the right one. Not all tube amps are great, in my opinion. I do have one left. I got rid of all my amps except for 3. Actually, I have 3 left. I have 2 old Ampegs that were great, the SS150s, and I have this really weird PV. It was like the first really good PV amp that they ever made. It was called like a vacuum tube 120, something. It's 120 watts, and it's amazing. It has crunch, super crunch and clean. So it's a 3-channel amp. It's like a vacuum tube, something like that. It's like turquoise in color, but nothing I've ever played sounded like that thing. It was great. As soon as I heard it, I was like, I gotta have it. So that's the only tube amp I have left. I got rid of my Marshalls and all the stuff that I had. So let's see what else Chris asks me. Which guitars and amps were used on my new album, Tribulations? This Carvin, and there's another one in the back. There's a blonde one that is exactly like this. The only difference is the pickups. These pickups are a little hotter on this one. And I used an Ibanez acoustic guitar, an Ovation acoustic. How many basses did we use on? I used a Charvel bass. I used an Ibanez Sound Gear. And I think that was it for basses. But all the basses went through. I have a little AX8 or an AX8, whatever you choose to call it, by Fractal. All the bass tones were created on that, and I thought it sounded really good. So you'll see that when I show you the other video. This is my Fractal pedal board that actually controls both my studio Axe-Fx XL Plus, which you're seeing here, and then I have a live one in my live rig. I have an AX8 or an AX8, whatever you want to call it, here. For the studio, all the bass sounds were done on my new album, Tribulations, were done through that. And all the guitar sounds you hear came through this Axe-Fx XL Plus. And of course, like I said, that's the pedal board with the expression pedals. This is my live rig. And actually the bigger rig. I use a smaller rig these days. But there's another Axe-Fx in there, and that pedal board I showed you actually controls this. These are 25-watt greenback cabs, and this microphone isn't for miking it. Actually, this is a vocal microphone. But anyway, I like the 25-watt greenbacks because you can actually use a little less gain from them, and they break up a little quicker. So I don't like to use, loads of gain, yet I get loads of sustain. I think there's a difference between gain and sustain. So the 25 watters are great for me. I'm going to come out into this room here, which is still under construction. You'll have to forgive me here. And this is pretty much the rig that I'm using live these days. It's got another AX8 with 2 expression pedals. And I'm going into this Fender Champion, which is just amazing to me. It does modeling as well. But I'm just going the output of the Axe-Fx into the effects loop in the amp, so it bypasses the front channel. But the other day I happened to plug into this thing directly, and it has like every Fender amp that was ever made. And it's actually amazing. I could use this without my Axe-Fx. It even has a pedal board that comes with it. It's got built-in effects, and it's probably got like maybe 30 different Fender amps built into it, clean, dirty. It goes from Van Halen to Metallica to jazz to clean, so it's really a great amp. So I've been using that. It's 30 pounds, 212s, stereo. I don't know what the speakers are in the back, whatever Fender put in there. It sounds great, though, and I'm perfectly happy with it. And this little rig, I can carry the amp in one hand and the pedal board in another. There's a bunch of guitars in there over there. These are my current guitars that I'm using over here. Like I was mentioned to you, the other Carvins, the 3, the brown, the blonde, and the purple one. There's an Ace Frehley Les Paul back there and an Ibanez. There's some pretty cool guitars around here. So anyway, that's pretty much what I'm using, when I'm not using, my studio stuff here. And I just wanted to show that to you. So I hope that helps. If I could only choose one guitar, which one would I take? Definitely this one. Some sort of Carvin. I just think they're great. They play like a cross between a Les Paul and a Strat. They have a great sound. They have fast necks, 24 frets. I have a strange tuning in case you haven't noticed. And it helps me to have 24 frets so I can get a little higher because I'm tuned down to a C below your normal, 440E. So my E is here. So it's a different way to play. It's the only way I play. I've been down tuning. I'm probably one of the first guys to tune exclusively down, like all the time. You got all these guys tuning down now, low Bs and all this stuff. I did it 40 some years ago. I've been doing it. So I'm not saying I'm an innovator of it. It's been done before me, but I tune exclusively to this weird low C, open tuning. And that's really the only way I can play. I can play very little standard guitar, believe it or not. So anyway, let's see. I think that's everything. Yeah, the only guitar I choose, and this is it. So I hope this was informative. And listen, you know, tones are subjective. You know, don't try to copy anything. Do your own thing, and don't be afraid to experiment, you know, and do as much research as you can. Because let me tell you, there's a lot of things floating out there where you can spend money real fast and then be stuck with, you know, a room full of gear that cost you a fortune that you can't use, that you got to try to sell. I've been there, and just about all the guys that I know that were tone chasers like me had the same thing. Everything sounded good. So-and-so used this, and this guy used that, but they don't tell you they have modifications done to it. So do your research. And, you know, if you have a music store that allows you to try before you buy, definitely do that. You know, it's like super important. And the most important thing, if you're searching for this tone and you're a tone chaser or tone tweaker, whatever you want to call yourself, don't get so wrapped up in it that it affects your playing, because it will. You will go right downhill very fast. So, you know, have your experimental time, or what I like to call lab work, and then hit the books, you know. Just play. Don't stop playing. Just keep playing. Don't worry about your tone. Your fingers eventually are going to come into the room and do the talking for you. And then you're going to get an amp that accentuates that. So stay focused. Do that. And limit your time tweaking your tones, because it can be a road to nowhere, to where all you do for hours and hours and hours is tweak. And then your chops go down. So stay focused. Do what you got to do. And best of luck. I hope this helps. Take care. See ya.